Yeah, there's at least 3 of them coming down over there. Woo-hoo. Flippers up. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. A particularly wild show today because we're going offshore on a little adventure. On a show a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the fact that gray seals are moving into Maine. They didn't used to be here much, but suddenly they are. And the second largest pupping colony in the United States is Seal Island south of Stonington. We talked about the fact that the Idaho Ferry was about to make a special trip out there to see this natural phenomenon. Well, that trip went last weekend. I was on it, and this is it. A lot of things are about to go right, and a lot of things are about to go wrong. Hey, this isn't a Disney movie. It's real life in a small boat to a distant island on a winter sea. All so that we can see what these big seals are doing out there. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Enjoy the rest of the theme music because when it stops, we'll already be out on the water. It's a beautiful day, mostly. It was 3 degrees when I left the house this morning. Might make it to 20 degrees later on today. I'm standing in the back of the Mink, the Idaho ferry boat that is right now taking us out to Seal Island. This is Sunday morning, December 11th. We were supposed to go out yesterday on Saturday, December 10th, but gale warnings were in effect Friday night and the Saturday surf was predicted to be too high. This boat is certainly big enough to fight the 6-foot waves out to the island that was expected yesterday, but many of the passengers would have regretted getting on board. It's quite a bit improved today, but actually it's still pretty windy. I checked the maritime forecast this morning. Winds are supposed to be about 10 miles an hour from the northwest, shifting to west after lunch. Waves should be about 2 feet, falling to 1 foot later. It's pretty good, and if the winds are more north than west, Idaho will screen us a little bit from the worst of it until we get well offshore. On board, there's about 30 of us braving these December conditions to go out and see the gray seal pupping colony on Seal Island. Tracy's the captain, Amanda's first mate, I'm the spotter, though mostly I'll be spotting birds and other wildlife. The seals are huge, and folks shouldn't need much help spotting those out on the island. The big question as we leave the dock is this. Is this going to be more adventure or ordeal?
A few safety things right off the bat. In case of emergency, we have 28 life jackets up overhead, plus another 14 down below, so that we have plenty of life jackets. We're not expecting any emergencies, but let you know that there's also a life raft up on the top side that will hold some of us. So it's going to be a little choppy going out there today. All right, not as bad as yesterday. It has died down a little bit. We will be following a northwest wind. It's about 10 to 15. It's going to be some chop. We'll be inside the island here until we get outside of Idaho, south of Idaho. I'm hoping that we see something out there. It's going to be about an hour and 45 minutes out to the island. We'll hopefully, depending on the conditions, we'll spend anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, depending on what we see, and then we will steam back. Coming back, we'll be heading into the wind, fighting the tide. So, once again, it's going to be a little choppy. It's going to be a fantastic day. All right, the sun's out, it's shining, and we're thinking positive that we're going to see a lot of seals. This is our 3rd attempt in 3 years. Yay! Thank you for being extremely flexible. I know we did have a date scheduled for next Saturday, but looking out at the long-range forecast, it looked just as bad as it did yesterday. So thank you for, once again, for being flexible and rearranging your schedules and coming on board with us today. Other than that, I hope everybody enjoys. Take care.
Already a lot of west in this wind.
Yes, there is. Enough north that it feels like Canada.
Gillibot, Gillibot. 15 minutes out. Still not that far out of the harbor, passing by some of the islands. Wind is pretty stiff from the north. We've got, probably about 20 degrees. We'll call it 15 degrees. Wind chop is about, the waves are a foot, maybe 18 inches. That's nothing for the Mink. So far, winter ducks have been very good. We've had a lot of black guillemots, a lot of surf scoters. We've had some common loons right close, a lot of long-tailed ducks as we're leaving the harbor. Nothing exotic yet, but we keep looking. So far, it's okay. A little colder than expected, and the majority of the passengers are staying inside the cabin where it's pretty toasty. Me? I'm dressed in layers, about 14 layers. British Captain Robert Scott led the first attempt to reach the South Pole. If he had been dressed like me, he might still be alive today, although he'd be 148 years old. Anyway, I'm dressed warm. In winter, a lot of sea ducks come down from the Arctic and stay with us until May. Plus, we've got some sea ducks that live here year-round. Some of the best places to see these birds tends to be close to the harbors, which are sheltered enough to protect the birds and shallow enough so they can go down and get some food. Black guillemots are part of the Puffin family, and there's a bunch of them all the way from Stonington out to Seal Island. Long-tailed ducks are pretty abundant. This is usually a good place to find scoters, which are pretty big ducks, and there's a bunch of surf scoters hanging around right here in front of us. One bird that I'm really looking for is purple sandpipers. They're a little smaller than pigeons, but plump like that. And they come down in winter from very high up in the Arctic. I'm looking for them. And when I finally think I see them, I'm wrong. Sandpipers. Yeah, I got some sandpipers, probably purple, some of the rocks over here. No, you can just make it enough. They're awfully white. I don't think they're purples. Yep. They are too white. They are not purples.
These are sanderlings?
They're way too white.
So sanderlings then. Sanderlings would be the only other possibility.
Yeah, unless they're even...
do you have a good way to distinguish between like a sanderling and a sandpiper?
Yep. Sanderlings are going to be fairly plump and very white. The purple sandpipers are going to be blending right in with the rocks, purple-gray.
Oh, okay.
And they're going to be...
We should see some today.
We should.
Okay.
In fact...
I am always confused at which is which.
There's one rock where they tend to always be, and we usually go near it. We'll see.
Sanderlings are bigger, too.
Okay. Sanderlings are bigger and rounder?
Plumper.
Plumper.
Yeah, exactly. Purples are just fat little sandpipers.
They're white.
Sanderlings are as the same size but sleeker.
Yeah.
How many people here are also interested in birds? Here's what I'm hoping to see. I'd like to see all three scoters out here. We've already had some surfs. Those are the black ones with white on the back of the head and on top of the forehead. Black scoters will be completely black with a really yellow bill. Females will be brown with sort of like light-colored cheek patches. White-winged scoters may be the hardest, but this is a good place to look for them. They're a little bit bigger. They're also black, and they've got white around the eye that makes them look like they have a really big eye. So I'm looking for those three. This is one of the best sections of all of Maine for black guillemots, and they've been all over the place. Those are gray, sort of long pencil-thin bills. They have white wing patches, and they're everywhere. Long-tailed ducks have been everywhere. They're white, sleek, and fast. They're also diving ducks, and they've been flying around. I'm looking for, we've seen several loons already, common loons. I'm looking for red-throated loon, which is going to be a little snakier. It's going to be thinner, upturned bill, narrower bill, and I'm really looking for that one. I'm looking for any of the members of the Pupping family. Black guillemots is a Pupping member. Razor bills are typically seen on this trip. Common murres tend to go elsewhere, and thick-billed murres come down from Newfoundland, so it's possible we would see one of those. A dovekey is a really tiny Puffin family member. The odds are really against that, but I'm looking. Harlequin ducks are here. They're usually at the south end of Isle of Hope, but you can see them even in here sometimes. So I'll be paying attention to those. I'll be looking for any white wing-tipped gulls. All the gulls we see could be herring and great blackback. But if you see one with all white wingtips, Iceland gulls are a strong possibility, and glaucous gull is a possibility. So I'm looking for all of those as well. And if you see me and get excited, you should get excited too.
Okay.
If I get excited, you should get excited too. Well, That's my motto. We're on board the Mink, one of the boats operated by Islaho Ferry, and we're heading out to visit the gray seal pupping colony on Seal Island, 20 miles out to sea from Stonington. It's cold, windy, and choppy. And the wind and waves are already looking a little more difficult than the forecast had it. And we're still back here among the islands. After the break, we will have been out of the harbor for about 30 minutes. There's about 30 people on this boat. And I'm starting to wonder if all of them can keep breakfast down once we clear the harbor in Islaho. Plus, if the wind really has shifted earlier than expected, it'll be blowing right into the cove out there at Seal Island where we're hoping to see the seals. This could get dicey. Stand by. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. It's Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Last weekend, the Islaho Ferry left the dock in Stonington at 9:30 Sunday morning. Already, things weren't going according to plan, because it was supposed to leave the dock on Saturday morning. Unfortunately, there were heavy winds Friday night, and they were still bad on Saturday. Furthermore, Monday was the day a storm was coming in, which it did. And that meant we had one chance left to get out to Seal Island and visit the gray seal pupping colony. And about 30 passengers weren't going to pass up this rare opportunity. Now, I've been following the forecast carefully, and it looked like the seas were going to calm down and the wind direction would be favorable. They didn't, and it wasn't. But as we start part 2 of today's adventure, I don't know that yet. It's 10 o'clock. Wind has died off quite a bit. Waves are still up, but really there's no splashing spray there where there was. We can't sit in the outdoor seats because they're all caked in salty ice. But no one wants to sit anyway. About 2/3 of the crowd is inside the cabin staying toasty warm. The rest of us hardy souls are outside watching for ducks. We're seeing a lot. As we head down the south side of Islaho, down the west side, Mount Desert Island is there in the distance. You can see the big mountains of Acadia National Park. We're coming up on Islaho now. We have to pick up a couple of people there because they're going to join us for the adventure. Conditions are about 1.5 waves still, but no real spray at this point and no real wind. And it's really not that cold. The sun is bright and strong. The visibility is sensational. You can see everything at a distance. Yes.
Do long-tailed ducks have a different name? I can't find them in the Peterson guide.
If it's an old guide, it says Old Squaw.
Old what?
Old Squaw.
Yeah, that's it.
That was the old name. Not politically correct, and they matched it up with what they called it in England. So they decided to change it to long-tailed duck about 15 to 20 years ago.
Oh, okay. Cool. That shows how old my guide is.
Yep. We've just left the pier in Islaho, adding 2 more people from the island. This pupping colony for gray seals is something new out there on Seal Island. They've only recently begun moving back into the Gulf of Maine, and these big horse-headed seals only started giving birth out there in the last couple of decades. Even the locals are interested in seeing what the heck is going on out there. We are passing the lighthouse at Robinson Point. Tracy is the captain of the Islaho Ferry today. And as usual, he's got the inside story in this lighthouse.
Port side. This lighthouse was one of the last lighthouses built in the state of Maine. Actually, it's the only lighthouse that was not built for shipping, but for fishermen. Islaho Thoroughfare used to be Islaho Harbor, and it had great anchorage. The way that it was situated protected it from the winter storms. A lot of the fishing boats and vessels at the time under sail. Instead of having to sail all the way back to Penobscot or Belfast or Camden, would actually come into Islaho Harbor and Moores Harbor and drop anchor and wait the storms out. Problem is that to the south end of the island, there's a lot of shoals and reefs out there, or ledges I should say, and there's a very narrow pathway coming in. When this was built and first lit in 1907, it was the most up-to-date, modern, most comfortable keeper's light station on the coast of Maine, and every lightkeeper wanted it, so they had to hold a lottery. first lit Christmas Eve 1907 by the keeper's youngest daughter. He actually won the lottery. He came from Matinicus Rock. When he and his family moved in there, it was he, his wife, and their 9 kids. There's only 3 bedrooms in that house.
That's Captain Tracy. Now, second in charge today is Amanda, who also coordinates much of the adventure and publicity for the Idaho Ferry, which is a nonprofit. They exist primarily to get people back and forth to the island. But in recent years, they've added puffing trips in summer, because once the gray seals have given up their pupping colony, the puffins come back in to start their nesting season out there on the same island. In fact, pretty much the same end of the island. Now, Amanda's right here. Today's trip is the 3rd try, but the first time we've actually managed to leave the dock to go out to the Seal Island pupping colony. So, what went wrong the first 2 times?
Well, the first time, we scheduled it for the end of January, so the end of the pupping season. And then we got slammed with those nor'easters that hammered us like right after each other in early 2015. So we really missed our window of opportunity there. And then we tried to do this yesterday, but it was too bad. It was too windy.
And then last year, a lot of the crew was giving birth.
Yes, we... Our senior captain, Garrett Aldridge, and his wife welcomed a baby boy right around Thanksgiving, or the day after Thanksgiving. And me and my husband had our own baby a week before Thanksgiving, so we had our own birthing season too.
So obviously this isn't something you do regularly. It must be a little bit exciting for the crew to be able to do something unusual.
It is. It's very exciting. We brainstorm about all the different opportunities that we have. And we've been talking about doing a Seal Island seal pupping trip for quite a few years now. So to be able to do this with Captain Tracy is very exciting.
So what other things have you brainstormed that you've decided not to do yet?
Well,
come on, tease me.
We've talked about maybe doing a trip out to Crotch Island. The Historical Society did one 2 years ago, and that was very well attended. So to make it more a regular thing, that would be pretty neat. We've talked about doing other trips to other islands, just other islands. I can't give too many things away, Bob.
Why? Who else is going to do them?
Well, level of suspense is always a little thrilling.
You're still probably going to do the Harlequin Duck Tour again this year with Idaho?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's already scheduled.
Yeah. What's the date?
I think it is Saturday, April 1st.
Saturday, April 1st. Write that date down. That's another whole adventure coming up toward the end of winter. Harlequin ducks are some of the brightest, prettiest ducks in the duck world. They nest on raging whitewater rivers up in Canada and then come down in winter along the Maine coast in some of the most raging surf zones we've got. That's their niche. They go where no other duck dares to go. It's still a pretty rare bird, but for decades, the biggest wintering spot on the entire eastern coastline of North America is right here in the southern end of Idaho. For the last 4 years, this same boat we're on today has gone out to take a look at that natural phenomenon, and for all 4 years, I've been on board to help spot. And we've always had great weather. Looks like we'll do it again April 1st. Meanwhile, the weather on this gray seal spotting trip is getting a little more complicated. We've now cleared Kimball Island on the right, and we're advancing south along the western side of Idaho on the left. That means we're now starting to catch the full strength of today's westerly wind, and the seas are starting to pick up. We're getting some 3-footers now, and the spray is getting a little heavier. This is a good time to take a break while I clean the salt off my microphone. Give me about 3 minutes, and we'll be out closer to the lighthouse out there on Saddleback Ledge. Wish me luck. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8 on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. The second largest gray seal pupping colony in the United States is on Seal Island, which is about 20 miles out from Stonington and Rockland. I'm on a boat heading out there right now. Let's recap a bit. A few weeks ago, we aired a presentation by Dr. Jim Gilbert about the gray seal population we suddenly have. Gray seals are much bigger than the harbor seals we're all familiar with. Instead of a puppy dog face, they've got long, straight snouts that make them look more like horses. Gray seals are common enough in all the colder areas of the North Atlantic, both on this side of the ocean and the other. At one time, they were common enough in Maine, and there's plenty of evidence that Indians used to hunt them. But when Europeans arrived, they looked at the gray seals with suspicion because they thought they were eating too many of their cod. So they shot some, and the rest went away. In about 1987, Canada automated the lighthouses on Cape Sable Island at the southern tip of Nova Scotia. As soon as the people left, the seals moved in. They started making a lot of babies. More seals also started moving down from farther north. It wasn't long before they started moving into the Gulf of Maine, and the first pupping colony was discovered in 1996 on Green Island, which is just a small island east of Swans Island and south of Bass Harbor. Soon after, they started moving on to Seal Island, and now over 1,000 pups are born there every year. This has all happened in just the last couple of decades, so we're going out to take a look. This trip today is taking place on Sunday, December 11th. It was supposed to happen a day earlier, but small craft warnings postponed that, and it's still windy out here even today. And we get farther and farther offshore, it's getting even a little more interesting. Now 11:15, we've been out for an hour and 15 minutes. We're clearing the south end of Isle Ho. Beautiful, sunny, but slightly breezy day, and it's not even that stiff a wind. But it's been going long enough where it was going overnight, the waves are still up. So we're fighting 3-footers at this point, probably up to 3 feet. No big swells, but no real relief either. But the Mink is a big, strong, sturdy boat that really tracks well, doesn't bounce around much. Not a lot of spray. I guess we're doing all right. And it's just a beautiful sunny day. I'm dressed warm, but I don't think it's that cold out here. If the wind doesn't get through your clothing, it's really not bad at all. Gannett! Right over us. Gannett! Gannett!
Oh, you're so cool, Gannett.
Northern gannets are the biggest bird you can see out here in the Gulf of Maine. The wingspan is between 5 and 6 feet. They plunge dive like lawn darts to grab fish under the surface. Gannets nest in huge colonies in Quebec and Newfoundland.
There'll be a lot of those in North Shore of Prince Edward Island in September.
They had a day where 1,000 passed Schoodic Point this fall.
Wow.
They have a sea watch going on, and they just kept going. Razor bills! 3 razor bills on the horizon flying away. Damn it. Those guys got away.
Those are cute little birds.
Razorbills are in the puffin family, and they nest on some of the same islands around here. Puffins go away in the winter, but razorbills are still out here, and you just got to pay attention. Gonna have to get a lot closer than that to have a thrill. Another razorbill closer. Seas have gotten bad enough, maybe above 3 feet now, with some rollers that are approaching 4 feet, maybe 5. So Captain Tracy has actually adopted different tactics. We're sort of tacking our way to the island at a little slower speed. So we'll go right into the waves one direction, then swing and go exactly perpendicular to them for another direction, because if you go quarter in, that's when you seem to rock the boat the most, so we're trying to avoid that. So right now we're on a tack where the waves are exactly coming on us from the side, and then we'll swing into them and we'll zigzag a little bit to make it the rest of the way to the island, which is, at this point, is only about a half an hour away, maybe less. Certainly it's a much bigger blob in the horizon, and this is a 65-acre island, so you can see quite a distance. I can even see Matinicus in the distance this morning. On a foggy day you couldn't, and there's really not a lot of sea smoke, but there's enough boiling sunshine coming off the rough ocean that it's just a shimmer. And we've got to be maybe 20 miles away from that. Directly behind us, I can still see the windmills of Vinyl Haven. In fact, we're really not that far from Vinyl Haven, maybe 10 miles. little further. So we're zigzagging our way to Seal Island, trying to take the bite out of some of these bigger waves. That's making it tougher to find sea life out here. Usually we might have seen some harbor porpoises or harbor seals along this passage. I'm still looking for other members of the puffin family too. The rarest one would be a dovekie, which is just a little tiny seabird. Another rare one is the thick-billed murre. I've got a better chance at that puffin cousin out here. But so far it's just those razorbills. 2 razorbills flying. 2 razorbills flying. Razorbills right behind the boat. Razorbills.
Are they a type of hawk?
They're part of the Alcidiorf puffin family.
Yeah.
And they nest out here.
Yeah.
Puffins go away. A lot of the razorbills don't.
Where do the puffins go?
All over, mostly towards Greenland. They do have nanotags now, so they know some of them are going down as far as almost Bermuda. So when they go out to sea, they just go out and they wander. Mostly colder water, so Greenland more often.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing about puffins. The only time they come to Maine, and the only time they ever go on land, is to nest. And they don't do that until they're maybe 5 years old. Otherwise, they are totally water birds, somewhere out in the ocean, but not here. We're getting closer to Seal Island. I get out to this island at least a half a dozen times a summer, so I know it pretty well. And I can see where the surf is pounding in the distance. This is going to be a problem. If the wind was from the south or east, we'd be screened a little bit in the cove, but the swells would be bigger, so I guess that's okay. But today's breeze is really coming directly from the west, which means it is sweeping up the near side of the island, where I think the seals are. It's going to be rather rough. Maybe this wasn't such a great idea. Looks like a big flock of eiders is passing way in front of us. Just a smudge in the horizon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, about a dozen. Let's take a break while we get the boat in close to shore and start to look for gray seals. Today's episode of Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is coming to you from about 20 miles out to sea. We're at Seal Island on board the Isle au Haut ferry, visiting the second largest gray seal pupping colony in the United States. The harbor seals you're more familiar with give birth in May. Gray seals start pupping in December, and that goes through February. We know we're out here right at the very beginning of the season. We know that thousands of seals will come here, and at least 1,000 pups will be born. What we don't know is how many seals are out here now, whether there are any babies yet, and if so, where is everybody in this big 65-acre island that is right now being pummeled by surf, that is being kicked up by a 15-mile-an-hour wind from the west, and the aftermath of strong winds that hit the coast over the last 24 hours. We'll find out in a moment. You're listening to Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. We're at sea on today's show. In fact, we've arrived at our destination, Seal Island. For the last 20 years, an increasing number of gray seals have been coming ashore on this island in front of us to give birth between mid-December and the end of February. It's become the second largest gray seal pupping colony in the United States. We're on the Isle au Haut ferry on a special trip out of Stonington to see this natural phenomenon. The date is Sunday, December 11th. Harbor seals, which we're all a little more familiar with, give birth down near the waterline. Pups can swim almost immediately. Gray seals give birth higher up, often right up in the grassy areas on top of their pupping colonies. From the water, they can be a little harder to see up there. But we're now parked in the water below, looking for them.
Oh, there's one.
There's
right
one.
Up there.
Yeah.
Yep, right up on top.
So are they cows, sows? Cows, okay. Gannet right overhead.
Oh, yeah.
Gannet right up here. All of a sudden, this is a busy place. At least one gray seal is on top of the ledge, about 40 feet up, and she's apparently decided she wants to be closer to the water while we're around, so she's headed that way. In the meantime, one of those huge northern gannets is circling around the boat right overhead. Two more of those big birds are about 200 yards away and heading this way. At least one gray seal is playing cat and mouse with us in the water. or at least as much mouse as you can pretend to be when you weigh over 300 pounds. And now there's some more movement up there on the ledge top.
Oh, look, they're coming down.
Yeah, there's at least 3 of them coming down over there. Woo. Flippers up. More gray seals are popping up in the water. There's one right behind the boat. Another one to the starboard rear. Jeez, look at the size of those seals. There wouldn't be room for 2 of these in an elevator. Now there are several more seals coming down the ledge from the grassy area above, but it doesn't look like they're panicking, and they're not going all the way to the water. Dr. Jim Gilbert is on board. He's a seal expert. So, Jim, I'm guessing that when they're on land, they're a little nervous, but once they're in the water, they're a little more in their elements and more curious?
Yeah, or at least indifferent to us.
Indifferent.
Oh,
Oh, yep, right there next to us, behind. Yeah, that was a tremendous amount of indifference right there. Look at that horse head.
somebody want to come on up to the front here?
Yeah.
Nice to look. Come on there.
There's a nice seal right there.
One more?
Yep.
Yep.
There's one in the splash zone too, right there in the rocks.
Another one.
Yeah, there's one hauled out just beyond on the rockweed too.
Oh, yeah, there's another one. His head popped out.
Yeah, they're all over the place. Oh yeah, there's a nice silhouette right up there on top. Oh, two.
Yeah. One of those went to this water so fast, I think it might have been a harbor seal. They panic more.
I don't think they're babies.
No, not that.
No, there's two together.
Oh.
They were up on a rock.
No, one of them ran as fast as a seal can run, which is not fast. This is good, but it's not great. We're seeing maybe a dozen gray seals altogether. There should be more. This is the beginning of the pupping season, so some are still on their way here. But we need to change locations. We're in the cove on the northeastern edge of Seal Island. This is also where the big puffin colony is. Around the corner is where many of the summer birds congregate too, and we're going to head that way to see if the seals are doing the same thing. The only problem is there's an underwater ledge that sticks out into the ocean around this corner. It's still more than a half tide at the moment, but captains will never mess with this, and we need to swing out and around. This will take several minutes. When we get around the bend, there's a sight. Dozens of seals are hauled out. There's one cluster of 50 gray seals all sprawled out together ahead on the left. Ahead on the right, there's 20 more that are more spread out. There are several in the water just watching us, or in many cases not even bothering to look at us. Big seals may not like people that much, but they're not exactly afraid of us either. Oh, and there's another treat. Remember those purple sandpipers I said I was looking for in this trip? About 50 of them just landed right next to the seal cluster. Now, you gotta look hard because they're just little bumps in the seaweed zone from this distance, but you can see them well enough if you know where to look. For anyone interested in birds on the inside, there's a flock of purple sandpipers easy to see. See the dark ledge? You see the island, the little island? Yeah. Go to the left of that and the dark ledge. They're right at the water line, probably 50 of them.
We found the gray seals. Did anybody see any pups yet? Nothing?
No pups.
Nothing? Birds?
Birds, we saw purple.
3 eagles.
Eagles?
3.
3 eagles and about 30. What are they waiting for?
30 for what?
They're waiting for the pups so they can eat the placenta. Yeah, there are 3 eagles just soaring lazily over the island. They're just waiting for a berth because there's nothing they like more than a sealed placenta. Nothing gets wasted out here in the island. The longer we look, the more seals we spot, including those in the water. We probably got about 100 seals right in front of us, and we're on the back side of the island where we're blocked from most of the wind, so we're actually getting some pretty darn good views. However, we don't see any pups. If there are any, they're probably with their moms up high in the grass, mostly hidden from view.
Wait till I put this on.
Dr. Jim Gilbert is Professor Emeritus of Wildlife Biology at the University of Maine. He's the seal expert on board. And I'd say you were right, Jim. It was a little early in the season.
Birding action out here.
Yeah, but it's a good scientific point because gray seals are born over a 2-month period, and some of them are gone before others are born. So if you fly over just once or twice, you don't count them all. So, and they've made models for how to count them, and an important date is when they start pupping, and they haven't started pupping yet. That's good.
That's good information.
We know that.
Hey guys,
Hi.
Hi.
how you doing?
Well, thanks. You lost?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So-
here's Swans Island.
Amanda is now in the back of the boat with us. She's today's first mate, but she's also the publicity coordinator and trip planner for the Idaho Ferry. And Dr. Gilbert is showing her on the map here another pupping colony.
Oh, okay.
That one right there
The one in the middle?
is the one you want.
Okay.
Oh,
They're
so
probably
that's where it was.
That's probably about 40 pups.
Okay.
And it's on a slope,
Yeah.
so you're able to see the pups up on top. Where
cool.
here, if they were pups, we couldn't have seen
Yeah.
them.
Right.
And it's not that bad.
Yeah.
You can get over there.
Oh yeah. It only takes us an hour to get to Swans Island.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't take us, and it's a much nicer ride. There's lots of other things to see.
Yeah, we went out of here from Bass Harbor, or from Northeast Harbor one time, but the seas got rough and we got out to here. But we did see them.
Huh. All right.
I don't know if you recognize what you just heard, but that was the beginnings of a plan coming together. Dr. Gilbert has just pointed out where the other pupping colony is, Green Island, just on the east side of Swans Island. It's actually closer than Seal Island to Stonington. It doesn't have as many seals pupping, but they're a lot more visible. So I won't be at all surprised if the Idaho Ferry folks make a trip over there soon. That's what I like about these guys. When all other commercial boats are in dry dock or covered up with tarps, this boat is still ready for adventure. They'll try anything, and I'll try it with them. We're now on the way back to Stonington. Seas are still rough. We're still zigzagging our way back, trying to avoid hitting the big waves head on. I'll spare you the ride. Instead, we're going to just get a little more science about these gray seals. Stephanie Wood is the federal biologist in charge of the Seal Island pupping colony. I've got some questions for her, like, if this is the second largest colony, what's the first? How do they count them? Well, stand by. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, and the radio station is Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. We've just finished up a visit to Seal Island, the second largest gray seal pupping colony in the United States. We'll finish today's episode by filling in a few scientific gaps. Some time ago, I spoke with Stephanie Wood. She's the federal biologist in charge of the gray seal project that we just witnessed. First question, Stephanie. We got to the island today just at the very beginning of pupping. What exactly is the season and how long is it?
So gray seals have their pups over about a 6-week window that starts in the northeast U.S. usually in about mid to late December, and it will last through early February. And so what happens is the moms come ashore, they give birth to one pup, and they nurse that pup for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then the pup is abruptly weaned, and the moms mate with the males that are on the island, and then they head back out to sea, and the pups stay ashore for another week or two, and they go through a post-weaning molt. When they're born with this white fluffy fur, and then they molt that white fluffy fur, they live off their fat stores for a while, and then they head into the sea as well.
Question number 2, as I understand it, the seals give birth, and then they're almost immediately ready to mate again. And my question is, huh?
Yes, it's a cycle that we see in a lot of seals, and when you think about it, they're often dispersed and they're found on different islands and maybe out in the ocean at different times of the year, and so by having this distinct breeding season, it kind of allows them to all come together in the same place and find potential mates, which is hard if you're sort of searching around the Northwest Atlantic. If you're all kind of in the reproductive zone at the same time, it keeps things a little bit easier from a reproductive standpoint. But it's a very busy few weeks out there for them.
We've been saying that Seal Island is the second largest gray seal pupping colony in the U.S. So what's number one?
So the largest colony in U.S. waters is on Muskeget Island, which is down in Nantucket Sound.
Now, I understand there's a seal cam out there, and anybody can go online at explore.org and see what's happening out there. In fact, there's a puffin cam out there, too, for when puffins are nesting there in the summer.
So it's the same system, and it's set up and run by a group called explore.org, and they have these live cams in various places, and their goal is to sort of bring wildlife to people, which is really amazing because, you know, these seals are pupping in the winter in offshore islands. It's not like most people can ever get out to see this event happening, and so it's a really unique opportunity to get to witness this gray seal pupping event on Seal Island.
Okay, you get all this coordinated coming and going, and the seals are all showing up at the same time and fornicating. So, is this an actual migration?
So, that's a great question that a lot of people ask. They don't migrate in the classic sense of some of the other marine mammals like right whales that are, you know, in the Gulf of Maine in summer and then head south towards the Florida area in the winter. But we do see a lot of movements between sites, so we see them. They're using Seal Island right now, and then they'll go out to sea for a while and feed, and then they'll probably use a different island for molting. There's been a lot of branding and tagging studies, especially originating up on the sites in Canada. And we know from those individually marked seals, and I also did some genetics work for my research, that we know that individuals are moving around between sites in Canada and the U.S., but there's no sort of mass movement where they all head in one direction at the same time. But there's certainly a lot of individual movements between Muskeget and sites in Maine and sites in Canada.
So do you get to go out on the island?
I have been out to Seal Island. I have been out to Seal Island in the off-season, so I have not set foot on the island when the seals are there. I have flown over it many times. How we get population estimates or information on what the population is doing is we fly over the sites and we actually take photographs from the plane, and then we come back down and use those photographs to actually count up the numbers. So I've flown over it.
Now, obviously we were out there at Seal Island, and there were 3 bald eagles soaring around rather lazily, just waiting for something to happen. Do they actually go after the newborn babies? Because those mama seals are pretty big.
So what we often see happening is, and some of this has been caught on the cameras, is the eagles will either actually go after the placenta right after a pup is born. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of birds doing that, and what we see as well is sometimes abandoned pups, so pups that have either been weaned early or for some reason have been separated from their mom. Oftentimes we see birds will prey on them.
I probably should have asked this one first, but we've got the gray seals. We've got lots of harbor seals. We get hooded and harp seals now and then. What's the difference between a seal and a sea lion?
That's another good question. So the true seals are also known as the phocids, and the sea lions are known as odoriids. And there's several differences. When you're looking at them, a couple of things. The biggest one is sea lions actually have ear flaps, and seals do not have ear flaps. They have ears, but no little flap. Sea lions they have much larger forward flippers and hind flippers, and so they can sort of get up on all four and walk. Often it's sea lions that we see, or, you know, that we're historically seen performing in zoos and places like that. Sea lions tend to be found sort of a little bit more temperate than the seals. There are no sea lions in the North Atlantic.
Okay, last question. What is the one thing about seals that would most surprise people?
There's a lot of things probably that people would find surprising. I mean, I think your reaction to when I said, yep, they have their pups, and two or 3 weeks later they mate and they head back to sea. Another really interesting thing that a lot of seals do is they have something called delayed implantation. Oh. And so after mating, the egg is fertilized and it divides a few times, and then it actually goes into a suspended state. And the moms go out to sea and they feed for a while, and then we think somewhere around March, actually, the embryo starts dividing again. And this is another mechanism to keep them sort of all on the same cycle. It probably also allows the mom to go out and feed and replenish her body after just giving birth and nursing a pup before supporting another fetus. So I think that's a pretty neat thing that happens in seal biology.
There you have it, a thorough understanding of seal science in under 6 minutes. Stephanie Wood is the chief federal biologist in charge of the Seal Island Pupping Colony. As I've hinted several times throughout the show, the Isle Ho Ferry is a nonprofit that does more than just take people out to Isle Ho. They do puffin trips in the summer, and I'm often the spotter on those too. They do a trip to see harlequin ducks around Isle Ho sometime in late winter. I'll be on that. Their website is islaho.org. Next week is the big holiday weekend, and I hope you can squeeze us in because my guest will be Mark McCullough, and we're going to talk about reindeer, or as we call them on this side of the Atlantic, caribou. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. We'll return next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 8. And remember, all shows are archived at 929theticket.com. This is Sports Radio 929 The Ticket.